Gentlemen, I present to you a day in chess history, and I'd like to apologize before I actually jump into looking at any of the games. There was no way that I could avoid spoiling the result in the thumbnail, in the title, and so on. Today, in Norway Chess 2020, Magnus Carlsen and Jan-Krzysztof Duda had a game. Magnus, of course, hasn't lost in over 2 years, and Duda's having a disaster of a tournament. Let's see what happens in their game. And one more thing, they actually have to play again tomorrow because of the way the system of double round robin works. Duda has white, and he plays e4, c6 from Magnus. Karo Khan, baby. Best opening ever. d4, d5, and again goes for the classical. I don't know what Duda's doing. He hasn't looked at my openings course, I guess, but e5 is winning. It wins by force. That's all there is to it. And bishop f5, h4. You win every game, and that's it. But we get knight takes d takes c4, knight takes c4, and rather than going for the classical variation, Magnus goes for the immediate trade of knights, knight f6, gf6 is Bronstein-Larsen, e takes f6 is a Tartakower, and now the main line setup is actually not for white to put the knight on f3, but to play c3, queen c2, bishop d3, and knight to e2, which is exactly what he does. And now, again, this wasn't taken because it was a check. Now black plays the move h5. This has become the main line. Black used to play h6, g6, all these different things to stop this. And then it turned out that actually you can play like this because you're a super grandmaster and people just move the pawns up 2 squares and they don't really, care about the safety of their king. At the same time, the point is to go here and prevent this knight from moving to g3. And then you can play queen c7 and also prevent the knight from moving to f4. So we get bishop e3, long castle, and b5. This is a very bold move, because on the one hand, you look like you're attacking this side of the board. On the other hand, after d5, you have some serious problems. A lot of you talk about making videos. Well, Twitch talks about Twitch stuff. KEKW, am I right? But YouTube's always like, I get make videos about pawn play, and I did. You should check out the chess tips playlist. This is a very interesting pawn break. Where if you take, you weaken your b-pawn, and then my rook is opened up, and I just kind of x-ray the entire row here. At the same time, if you play c5, which is what he did, you chuck this pawn, and Magnus was basically trying to argue that, well, that helps me open the b-file. And he was right, actually. He played rook e7, which is a fascinating move, unpinning his knight, moved his knight, and then brought his rook, while Duda's, I don't know, dancing around with a horse over here. So now he has doubled rooks, and here Duda played the move b3, which looks incredibly natural. Like, if you play bishop to b3, black plays a5, a4, digs away your bishop from the defense. b3 is the only move, but Duda spent like 30-something minutes on it. And at that point, psychologically, you were like, all right, looks like this is Magnus's game to win. He's really going to find a way here. Played rook b4, and then sacrificed the rook, with the intention to play rook b4 again, but that's why bishop d2 was played, activated his bishop, and Duda's under some serious pressure here. But here, Magnus had to do something. All right, he had to do something. He had to play knight to g4, f3, and take. And the point is that if the queen takes, then you have knight to f2, and you fork. If the rook takes, you have knight to f2 and you fork, and if you have f takes, then you have bishop to e5. And the reason you don't have knight f2 in this position is it's not a fork. That's the difference, is that every time another piece arrived there, it was a fork. Now you go bishop here, rook b2 is coming, and you're just gonna get completely steamrolled down the b file. And the knight can jump in at any moment. So this position is absolutely dominant. The structure is good for white, but it's not doing anything, and your king is very weak. But he played h4, the beginning of problems. h3, stopping anything from coming to g4. Knight g6, rook e3. Excellent move. As Hikaru was saying during the broadcast, this is to transfer the rook over. White is up material, so white should want to simplify the position and trade pieces. Get it to a winning endgame. Knight f4, and now Duda starts to actually attack on that side, so he's got plans on both sides, g4 and bishop g6. If we got en peasant, we would have had fg3, maybe g4, maybe rook f1. So Magnus didn't want that and instead backed up. And now, the move of the game, really. The move of the game. And you can, you know, you can pause if you'd like, but King D1. Hikaru was so shocked when King D1 was played. I mean, and for good reason. The point of this move is that you want to play Rook B3, but you can't because Knight E2 check and the knight goes to D4. And so King D1 in the middle of the game, and Magnus immediately falls apart. F5. And after takes, Bishop H5, F3, he has no counterplay anymore. He's still able to create some with the move Queen to A1, but Bishop C3, Queen sneaks around to the G file, and here, Duda laid a trap. It looks like the knight can't be the knight can't be taken because of this, and it looks like White is in trouble because Black is going to get this pawn. He like brings in his queen, hits this, gets this. Rook B1 is a problem, but there's a stunning move here. Queen C2, which doesn't look so stunning at first. Essentially, again, you just want a queen trade, and then you're completely winning. You have a passed pawn, you have extra material, these pieces are locked out of the game. But Magnus played queen takes C4, and now there is a beautiful tactical continuation that can win White the game. Again, you can pause here. If you're watching on Twitch, you can't pause. I'm sorry. You're just gonna have to bear with me for a second. But you guys probably saw the game anyway. This is why you always have to look for checks. Check, check. Again, rook taking was not a check, but the whole point is you get a second check. And now you only have one check. Actually, you have two. You also have discovered check, but that's not the right check. You want to move this bishop and win the queen with a discovered check. But look at this. Rook H8. Stunning. And bishop takes G7. King G7, Queen C4. You're up a queen. You're going to get the pawns. You're going to promote, and you win. And that's it. Rook E8 check, and it's the beginning of the end. Magnus chucks a rook. Because otherwise, there was no Rook H8. Then he takes a few pawns, and Duda runs his king. In this position, there was something also incredibly beautiful. If Knight D3, King B1, Knight E1, you don't take this. Instead, you play the stunning Rook H8, King H8, and Queen H6. This was beautiful. King G8 and Queen G7. And you obviously can't take because the bishop would have been pinning the king. So this tactical motif, Rook H8, just was the end. And Magnus didn't resign for a while. But slowly, Duda got there. Duda allowed a little bit of counterplay, shuffled around, and then finally did the right thing by sacrificing the rook for the bishop. This is the simplest, and this is a lot easier than trying to fight against the bishop standing in the center. And, you know, he picked up some pawns, had to walk his king. It was a long process, but here Queen H7 is winning because if the trade happens, just King to B5, and the pawn is promoting because the rook monitors the other pawn. But in the game, we got King G4 and now a deflection check, Rook E4 from the Queen. If takes, then takes. It's GG. And Magnus Carlsen, after Rook to E4, resigned the game, thus ending his over 120 game undefeated streak in classical chess. Classical chess. He has lost in Blitz and Rapid, but stunning. Duda, who had lost 3 times in classical and once in Armageddon, beats Magnus Carlsen, and tomorrow they have to play again. Today we had 2 other games, and that's a bit of a spoiler because that means there was no Armageddons. It means that there was 2 decisive games on other boards, but I'm not going to tell you what went where. First, let's take a look at Firouzja versus Tari. Tari obviously not having a great tournament, but did beat Duda in the Armageddon, and Firouzja's having a great tournament. I mean, he's actually just straight up having a good tournament. Like, my man beat Levon, my man beat Fabi in Armageddon, he beat Duda, he took Magnus to Armageddon and should have won. I mean, he's doing great. So this was an Italian. It was a very, very, very slow gioco piano with C3, D3. A little bit of a modern twist with A4. This is kind of like the way they play it now. They trade and then they play B4. I really like this from Black, actually. It's really interesting. You try to play like Knight H5 and Rook G6. And this was just a long maneuvering game. So first kind of central break of pawns. Black doesn't take because he doesn't want to surrender control of the center. Now B5, another break. You're trying to make progress on the queen side, and black is trying to make progress on the king side with his pieces. He's maneuvering his pieces. So knight f1, and now we have a trade, opening up this. Now a very nice move from Alireza, taking away the b6 square from this bishop. And the bishop also is staring into a rock-solid center. So that bishop is really out of the game. Tari is trying to kind of offset that by attacking, but he's forgetting that he's playing without a piece. And in taking the pawn in the center, he allows this transfer of activity to the queen side. And he chucks a pawn, which Alireza doesn't take, because he actually wants to keep the positional bind here. And now he takes it by forcing the rook to go backwards first. Obviously, if Tari had gone to e7, he could have taken, or he could have continued on with rook b7. But Tari says, no, I insist, take my pawn. Knight comes back, and now queen b7. Not all queen trades are the same. I always say you don't want to trade the queens when you're attacking a king, but this queen trade removes just an extremely important guard of this side of the board. It would allow the rook to come in, and Alireza just does it. He goes straight for the queen trade. Now, this is a weakness, and the bishop is terrible. And he just goes to that side of the board. He just goes to that side of the board. Immediately when the pawn is pushed, he takes advantage. It's like grappling. You know, it's like a guy, you know, is in a bad spot, so he tries to move to a different spot, and you take advantage of that movement. You just immediately take advantage of the movement, opening up the bishop to take this. And then, that is literally the reason that Alireza went on to get a winning rook endgame. It's because of this pawn. And even though this pawn is going to be lost, he invests fully in that one, and the passive nature here is what gets him the victory. The king march, the king march, the king march, the king march, and rook a6. And the problem is that even though it's 3-on-3, because the rook can never move, you win. So, some movement of pawns. Alireza baits king takes a7, trades the rooks, and this is it. The game is over on king to c6 because the king is being shouldered or boxed out, and something like this will happen. King b, and notice, it's not king c5. Although king c5 is probably also winning. It's more of a matter that I want you guys to understand that in king and pawn endgames, it can very well have to do with one square. There will be another endgame where this doesn't work. The reason this is winning is because you can go here. You can still go in and shoulder the king. At a certain point, if you just keep marching to the right, you don't have this ability anymore because you're not actually going to win this pawn. You need to make the diagonal movement at one of these 2 points to go for the base of the operations. Okay? You have to go to the base of the operations oftentimes to then move backwards. You know, same can be said for taking down the mafia. You can't just get to the head. You know, you got to take out little... So you got to hit the base. Although I guess for mafia it would be in reverse. You want to take out the head, and that really is the... Whatever. Bad analogy. I'm not really good at mafia analogies. But Alireza gets another win over Tari. And with this win, he gets, what, up to 10 points for the tournament because of the scoring system? Because he gets 3 points for winning in classical. Incredible. In the last game of the round between Fabi and Aronian, this one was amazing. So it was a Nimso, and you know you can't go e4 because of the pin. So you play f3 to try to play this. Black hits the center. We get d5. We get b5. Crazy. Already there's a lot of pawn tension. Obviously the knight is unable to take, but you want to take, so you lose a guard here. e4, d6. Black is like, bro, I don't care. Take it. Bishop d2. A trade. Sends the bishop back. Notice that black traded the dark squared bishop, but has a large, very large central kind of base of dark squared pawns. Knight e2, knight h5. The whole point of this is to play the move f5. And again, shattering the center before white is able to castle. And black's not worried about rook on f5. A lot of people during the broadcast were like, what about g4? Yeah, but you gotta remember, this bishop has no guard, so rook f3. Yeah, but Levy, what about bishop g2? Okay. And, I don't know. This is losing. And that's sort of a problem. You know, losing. So instead, we got queen d2 and long castles. But Aronian still has a very clear target now. Queen coming this way. So king b1, takes a pawn, knight to c1. Offers a trade of bishops, and takes the pawn on d6. knight f6, and queen c6. This attacks the rook. The rook has to go to e8. This opens an attack on the e3 bishop, and we get bishop back to f2, knight b8, queen b5 going for a trade of queens. By the way, if you missed what happened there, c4 closed the door on the bishop, but the rook now hits this way. Right? Like this. And now rook d4, rook c8, and b3. This is a very difficult position, because c3 is about to happen, and then black will bring in the knight, and then black will bring in the second knight. You've already got a rook just staring down at your king. Very, very, very bad position. So we get b3, and Fabi sacrifices an exchange. And his logic was that I have an extra pawn, I have 5 on 4, I've got bishop pair, I'm going to bring my rook, I'm going to be fine. Aronian says, we'll see about that. The rook e5, rook d6, knight back to e8. Kicks out the rook. Knight c7 begins the transfer. This knight moved across the country. Knight b5 and planted itself on a3. Sometimes you gotta do that, you know? Sometimes things aren't going so well in life, you gotta move. Career shift. You know, lose a friend, gain some experiences. I didn't know that we were gonna get philosophical here, but don't be afraid of change. Okay? Don't be afraid of change. Bishop a6, rook d8. Trading a rook. Again, just like in the Duda game, simplifying. King c1. He doesn't take on a7 because rook a5 would be a problem. Although now that I'm looking at this, I guess you would win the knight, but probably there's this. That's the problem. And then... Oh, wait a second. Then there's this. But then there's this. Then there's this, but then there's this. Then there's this? But then there's probably this. Aha! And then if you, like, move your bishop, it's check, check, mate. Okay, got it. But then there's that. So, yeah, king c1, bishop a7 didn't happen. Knight e6, bishop d3, knight c5. Beautiful game from Levon. Levon kind of demonstrated that you could take one step backwards to take, like, 7 steps forward in this game. Another simplification, rook d5, and comes back to d7. And a5, king g8, and it's time to, first of all, play g5, which clamps down on white's pawn structure. Very important, because white could have just started pushing all his pawns. So he clamps down, and again, reroutes the knight. This knight is like an Among Us imposter, pretending to be a white knight on b1, and then just starts to, you know, kill off the crewmates on a2. And even though Fabi did make his king all the way in, I mean, all his pawns are going to be lost. So rook d6, rook f3, bishop d6, gives a check, takes another pawn, and goes for the other pawn, and the game ends with him killing off everybody. One crewmate remains, but one crewmate does not win against one imposter, or 2 imposters. I don't know how many there are for black, but a very nice win from Levon Aronian, who also is having a really, really good tournament. He is actually winning the tournament. He has 11 points now after 5 rounds. Firouzja has 10 points, and Magnus is in 3rd with 9 after the first half of the tournament. Now, tomorrow, the 2nd round robin begins. All the games from the first half, but flipped colors. So tomorrow we will start with Duda having black. Magnus will have white. Very curious to see what Magnus plays against Duda, and so on and so forth. All right. Hopefully that just about wraps things up for today. Crazy that we witnessed chess history. I'll be signing off. I will see you in tomorrow's recap video, and you should definitely check out the video that I posted today, or at the time of recording, it would be yesterday. If you haven't already done that. And the website and links in the chat, in the chat, in the description. Be nice, be safe, have a good weekend, and I'll see you tomorrow.